Every economist and development analyst knows that small Caribbean islands must come together if they are to survive in today's world. The OECS Commission has been set up, and they've been doing a fairly good job so far in terms of bringing the OECS countries together. But is it enough, and what can they do more? Let's find out on this edition of Time to Face the Facts. I'm Jerry George. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back in just a moment.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email CaribbeanInformationHub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. Our scalable solutions will increase your effectiveness and efficiency while enabling workforce mobility. Large or small, you can't hide from potential threats to your business. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
Welcome back to this edition of Time to Face the Facts. We're looking at the question of OECS integration, and joining me this evening is its Director General, Dr. Didacus Jules. Dr. Jules, thanks again. You're one of the few people who have made it back more than once to Time to Face the Facts. Good to have you.
I'm privileged, Jerry.
Absolutely. The question of the Commission, as we know it today, what really is behind the setting up of the Commission?
Well, as you know, the OECS was set up in 1981 with the Treaty of Bastille. And in 2011, there was a revision of the Treaty of Bastille, the revised Treaty of Bastille, which moved to set up an economic union of the OECS member states. So the Commission really is the body that represents that higher level of integration of the OECS member states.
Now, I suspect there's some kind of model off of the European Union's Commission. Is there?
Not quite. There are differences. There are basic differences. The European Commission has a supranational authority in its functioning. In the case of the OECS, the member states retain their national sovereignty, but things are done more on the basis of consensus. And the authority, the Commission has also established the OECS Assembly. And the function of the Assembly is to be a forum for discussion, public sensitization, engagement of parliamentarians across the OECS so that they can have a unanimous position or at least some synergy of perspective on the fundamental issues affecting the development of the region.
I think
so we are not exactly like the European Union, but there are differences.
Yeah, I recognize the differences, but I'm thinking now in terms of strength. One of the things that has been boasted on, and I'm sure that it's more in relation to the currency, is that you could never get these countries to agree on anything. Isn't that, in a sense, a fatal flaw?
Well, I wouldn't say you can't get them to agree on anything. We have the EC currency. We're one of 3 currency unions in the world. And the EC currency has been very successfully run for at least almost 2 decades, I imagine. The thing about what the strength of the EC currency actually rests very heavily on the unanimity rule. that no single government of the OECS can make monetary authority contrary to what the currency union requires. And in the discussions on policies relating to monetary policy, all governments play an equal role. So there's no room for unilateralism in the management of the EC currency.
Now, I wasn't looking at so much as unilateralism, but the whole, you think in terms of the European Union and the fact that the Commission has a more authoritative role as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if you see it that way.
The authoritative role within the OECS resides with the authority, the OECS authority, that is the heads of government. And they've established mechanisms that allow for the respect for national sovereignty and difference, but at the same time driving things with some degree of unanimity.
I had a look at the structure of the European Union. We have ambassadors as commissioners from each of the countries. Why ambassadors?
Because the ambassadors are meant to serve as the key focal points with the member states and to be the points of contact with the Commission, so that the work of driving the objectives of the revised Treaty of Bastille really resides fundamentally with the commissioners in the member states. They are the points of contact. So to give you an example of how this works, when we were moving towards the freedom of movement of people, the ambassadors, the commissioners, played a key role in liaising with the Commission as well as with the member states, the respective member states, the customs authorities, the immigration authorities, and so on, in having public sensitizations and workshops and consultations with officials, because the approach to work in the OECS is a highly consultative process. We engage all of the relevant authorities and stakeholders before actions are finalized, so that, for example, as we move to the rollout of the freedom of movement, there was significant interface with the immigration authorities and all of the other stakeholders whose work immediately impinge on the freedom of movement of people. So that in its final rollout, the views, the concerns, the pitfalls that they would have identified would have been taken into account in the shaping of the final protocol.
No, I find it interesting because, again, as you do the relation with the European Union, the commissioners have to take an oath there to act not in the interest of their country, but the interest of the whole.
Yeah, well, in our case, it's the staff who take this oath. So I don't represent the interests of any single member state.
So the staff takes the oath?
Yeah, it's part of our terms of engagement that we are not to represent. And if you look at the revised Treaty of Bastille, it explicitly states that the staff of the Commission are not to represent national interests. We are to represent the interests of the region as a whole.
Okay, there are several issues really that the Commission, I'm sure, has to look at, and some of the institutions, we're going to be talking about them as we go along. But if you were to highlight the one thing that perhaps keeps you awake at night in the work of the Commission, what would that be?
That's a difficult one because I'm kept awake by so many things. And sometimes these are competing things. I would say the overwhelming preoccupation is how to move this process forward, taking account of the divergence and differences that will normally exist between member states, to try to shape an agenda that is acceptable and common to all. From time to time, so these are the strategic concerns. There are operational concerns that arise from time to time. Like, for example, a preoccupation with LIAT, although LIAT is not an institution of the OECS.
Are you talking about that little bit later? It's one of the things I have done.
It's a company in which governments participate, but having sorted out the freedom of movement of people, we still recognize that there are objective impediments to the full articulation of that, and the means of transportation is one of those problems. So,
when you also look at the work of the Commission, and what it's intended to achieve in the process. You say that multiplicity of things at times is a problem. What about the fact that you have 7 countries, all right, and each of them at different points are involved in the electoral process? How does that affect the work of the Commission?
Actually, we have 10 countries now.
Well, yeah, that's right.
That includes the non-independent states and Martinique. It can be problematic just from a logistical perspective because there are decisions that have been taken by heads and we proceed in the implementation of those decisions, and then sometimes, well, governments change, and when the governments change, we have to advise the new governments of what the position is and, you know, provide them with a full understanding of the rationale and what went into the initiatives that are being pursued. They may occasionally have a different point of view on it that has to be digested and accommodated as we go forward. I think that the challenge for us with the change of governments is that we need it brings into sharp perspective the need to ensure that accountability at the level of the Commission is exercised across the full political spectrum.
I was coming to that because the opposition should really be involved in that process.
So, yeah, we have had in the past meetings of the leaders of the political opposition. We intend to make this a regular feature of the work of the Commission, just as we have meetings of the heads of government. We will be having meetings with the opposition to keep them abreast in real time of the initiatives that are being pursued and the rationale for some of these.
You see, I think that is part of what is elective of our situation at the moment. We treat things like that as an option, but in today's world, if we're saying...
No, it's not an option.
No, that's what I'm saying. We treat it in people's minds, I think it's almost optional. But if we're saying that countries need to integrate, then the whole governance system also has to benefit from that. So that
because remember, Jerry, the integration thing ultimately is not just... While we speak about an economic union, it's not just about economics. It's also about developing society. And for society to succeed ultimately, democracy has to be strengthened within the union. So the engagement of forces across the political spectrum is a very important dimension of improving the governance of the OECS as we go forward. And what we are seeing is that as the global situation worsens for developing countries and small states in particular, we really have no choice. Because, for example, you saw what happened with the Clico debacle and the challenges of some of the banks in some of the countries, in Antigua, for example, with the Stanford Bank. The OECS has had recently to develop harmonized legislation on banking for stronger regulation and the protection of depositors. And that legislation is being passed across the board. Now, one of the things that we've been asked to do by the heads is to engage with leaders of the opposition so that we can have a full session on that banking legislation and the situation in banking in the Caribbean together with ECCB so that they can have full visibility of the challenges and why some of those changes are necessary.
But that's why I said just now about option. You've been asked by the heads. Shouldn't the treaty have included that as a normal thing?
Yeah, the treaty does include it, but it's a question of operationalizing it, and I am committed to ensuring that is done.
That sounds good.
In fact, my work history involves that. When I was at CXC, I think we were the only CARICOM institution that regularly met with the political opposition, although it was just in the sphere of education, but to keep them abreast of developments in terms of the strategic direction that the exams board was going in. And that provided great benefits because we saw as governments changed, there was a tendency sometimes to change educational policy, but those matters relating to CXC and the curriculum of the schools generally will remain untouched.
I bring something here. Current Prime Minister Gaston Brown, before he got into office, made a statement that stunned me. He said that if Liat was removed from Antigua, he will move to take Antigua out of the OECS. Is that possible?
Well, I think member states are voluntarily part of the union. So there is, I believe, a mechanism for withdrawal. The truth is I have not paid attention to that section of the treaty because I'm more focused on how can we consolidate and deepen rather than what are the provisions for withdrawal. But I would imagine it's in the nature of politics. Prime Minister Gaston then would be speaking. This is a card. The threat of withdrawal would be a card that anyone would pull if they were concerned about the possible withdrawal of the airline, and it's a sort of escalation of possibilities that could get you listened to. So, what I can tell you is that as Prime Minister Brown, he has been very, very supportive of the work being done in the OECS.
I'm sure. It's just the thought expressed that caught my attention and drew my concern. The fact that that thought could have been expressed.
Well, I don't think it's an unreasonable expression. I mean, you know, it's a voluntary association of states, and there must be something in it for everyone. And if you feel, you know, it goes in politics, it goes even in ordinary life. If you're part of a group in a collective company and you find that you're not receiving the benefits you ought to receive, then there's always the possibility and the threat of withdrawal. If people don't listen to the logic of your arguments, then a threat to withdraw will certainly get you heard.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at some of the institutions. And one of the major things in the region at the moment is certainly the economy. There's absolutely no doubt that the economy must take pride of place, because if the Commission is to work, you have to have working states economically. Am I correct?
Yeah.
I noticed that there has been some move between the IMF and the OECS Commission.
There's been somewhat?
The IMF and the Commission seem to have had some interaction.
Yeah, well, it's not just the IMF, so let's not make it appear that we, you know, suddenly deeply in bed with the IMF.
No, that's not a question of deeply in bed.
The approach being taken by the Commission now is to, with all of the multilaterals, to say to them, we do not want to deal with you on an ad hoc basis. Mm-hmm. We want to have systematic, clearly defined rules of engagement and parameters of engagement. So we've said it to the IMF, we've said it to the World Bank. We are going to be discussing this with CDB. There's a donor, a development partners forum that has been established, ECCB, ourselves, and all the major multilaterals, DFAD, DFID, CDB, World Bank, IMF, and so on. And what we're seeking to do is to actually, like for example, with the World Bank, map out the parameters of engagement with them. In what areas are we going to collaborate? What form is that collaboration going to take? So that we can then operate in a very structured relationship with those people. There have been situations that that have punctuated the importance of doing that. So, for example, we found occasions where the World Bank may decide on their own to undertake certain studies of different elements of economic development in the region, and they do that in Washington, and then the studies are prepared, and then the studies are put on the table for discussion. Now, we feel that, you know, in this 21st century, any discussion of development options for the Caribbean must involve Caribbean people. Mm-hmm. We have experts in the diaspora. We have a ton of persons who are highly qualified and capable. We need to marry our own intellectual capability with that of the experience and the international exposure that a World Bank or an IMF would bring to the table. So that when we shape those solutions, we are shaping solutions that are very, very cognizant and attuned to the reality on the ground, but which are informed by international best practice and experience. So,
well, I said the IMF because, like it or not, the stamp of approval of the IMF is seen by the international finance community as the stamp that is needed, whether you like it or not.
But bear in mind, too, that institutions like the IMF have been in a lot of global pressure from popular movements and so on, and they are beginning to listen a little more and listen better to what is being said. So in several cases, I mean, St. Kitts did a program to deal with their debt that was essentially shaped by them, not so much dictated by the IMF. Grenada structural adjustment is a homegrown thing. The IMF has been involved in the discussions, and they've given their support and blessing to the final configuration, but it's something done on local impulse.
But don't you think that the sense is always that the IMF gets the blame, and we hardly hear of what went wrong from the economies, and we're coming to talk about that because...
Well, there's some stock responses that some people within those institutions tend to have, like devaluation had been for years a favorite tool. Mm-hmm. Whenever the issue of devaluation, I mean, you've seen it here in Barbados, it's emerging in the discussions and the debate. We are resolutely opposed to the idea of devaluation. So there are other solutions that need to be pursued.
But if a country puts itself in the position that they have to devalue, you can't get around it. So, for example, if there's not sufficient foreign exchange that is being maintained, how do you get around it?
Well, the thing is, you don't wait to get to that dire situation, and that's what we are attempting to do within the OECS. We have been working for the last year or so on a development plan, growth and development plan for the OECS. And what is in there are not just emergency reactions to the current global situation, but also looking at bold new ideas that could be implemented that can take us way beyond where the problem exists right now. Mm-hmm. I think there's increasingly a very strong understanding that sometimes a crisis can be a great opportunity, because if you turn a crisis inside out and upside down, you find opportunities that may not have existed had that crisis not occurred. So, for example, when we just had 2 days ago a meeting of the inaugural meeting of the Council of Ministers of Agriculture of the OECS.
Hold your point. We must take a break, and we'll come back right at that point. This is Time to Face the Facts. My guest is Director General of the OECS Commission, Dr. Didacus Jules. We'll be right back in just a moment.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place, CaribVision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the CaribVision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. CaribVision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email CaribbeanInformationHub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
It's the end of the month again. My son's rent is due.
Sending money to your children studying overseas is easy. Western Union's safe and reliable service lets you transfer money everywhere in the world.
My son is doing well at school. That makes me proud.
Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Grand Anse, the Carenage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
Welcome back to this edition of Time to Face the Facts. With me this evening is Dr. Didacus Jules, the Director General of the OECS Commission, and we're talking about integration of the OECS and some of that's involved. When we went to the break, you're making a point as to the agricultural side.
Yeah, I was giving an example of the sort of bold new thinking that we bring into the table. We just held the inaugural meeting of the Council of Ministers of Agriculture. And the main focus of that meeting was looking at an agricultural plan of action for the OECS. The reality is that in the last 10 years, the food import bill has doubled. We are now at about over $400 million importation of food. And we see...
Just to cut, that figure I saw is a 2011 figure, 473 million.
Yeah, 2011. So it may have been even higher by now. But that's the latest figures we have, which addresses something else too, because the whole question of statistics for decision making, we are way behind. But we have a project with CDB and the World Bank that will create a whole new capacity for data management within the OECS that will see a much more robust and empirical approach to decision making. But I was saying, so we have this 400 million plus food import bill, and we see this as an opportunity to put in place a plan that seeks to not just reduce the importation of foods, but also to boost agricultural production. We see the plan having the potential to solve many problems at the same time. So a multifaceted approach that can have wide impact. Solving the problem of food importation is going to also create more jobs in the rural sector, which has been hard hit by some of the developments, not just climatic, but also political developments with our trade. It also provides opportunity for boosting rural development, for addressing nutritional deficits in the population, for dealing with health issues and non-communicable diseases. A lot of the evidence is connecting our high incidence of non-communicable diseases to the high levels of imported processed foods that we are consuming. So, in other words, every opportunity within that agricultural plan of action, one of the early low-hanging fruits that ministers have agreed to pluck is the question of school feeding programs. To have robust school feeding programs in place that make more use of local produce, that redefine the menu for schools to healthier menus, create linkages with the local farmers, and also use that for food and nutrition education, deepen that in the new generation that the school
the education point is absolutely, because what has happened to most of our young people is that they have this education of depending on the foreign stuff. Yeah. And in many instances, the local stuff is rejected. So that's a major, major piece of work.
It involves a real recultivation of taste and food preferences.
But it's a plan. One of the things that we do well in this region is that we have all of these plans, but they don't seem to get executed.
Well, the difference with this plan is that it's not a plan plucked out of thin air. We started by looking at what are some of the best practices and the initiatives that are already on the way. So this is what we're building on. By doing that, we hope to consolidate what is already there and to sometimes, expand its parameters so that we can go wider and deeper with those initiatives.
Let's look at a basic issue in agriculture in the region. This is basically an agricultural region. In practically all of the governments, agriculture has been just about abandoned. Okay? Again, we had a monocrop in most cases, but people went away and said tourism is the way to go. How convinced can the population be that the governments of this region, the OECS, are serious about putting agriculture back in the agenda?
Well, I think part of the thing of convincing people is for them to see the results. People sometimes, they don't get convinced by words, they get convinced by action. And as I said, there are a number of things initiatives that are happening that we have built into that plan. And as people see the actions being taken, I think there will be a stronger buy-in. The good thing is that internationally there's this sort of wave of greater consciousness about health and health awareness and so on, so that we are also benefiting from that. People are more conscious about what they eat, they're more careful about their health, they're more aware of the need for fitness, and we can build on those things in promoting the revitalization of agriculture.
The question of agriculture in the region has also to do with markets. When you speak to the farmers, which I've done several times, their biggest fear and the reason they don't commit to more agriculture, in the past was bananas, it went to geese, it went up to England. The other agriculture, the question of markets is an issue. But if even we were to walk through the islands, there's no regular shipping transportation through the islands. So is there a concomitant move in that regard to provide that kind of...
that's why I'm saying to you, Jerry, that, you see, we can no longer take the old approaches. We have tended in the past, in the Caribbean in general, to try to solve problems just in isolation. So we see a transport problem as just solely a transport problem. A transport problem is not just a transport problem. It affects every other sector. It affects trade. It affects movement of people. It affects prices of the goods because depending on how far things have to come from. So we are taking a more integrated look at the things that we do and how we do them. As I said, solving the food import bill is not just about reducing the outflow of foreign exchange. It's about creating jobs in the rural sectors. It's about improving national nutrition profiles. It's about import substitution. And yes, the transport question has to be taken into account. We have been looking more closely at the arrangements pertaining to sea transport across the region. And
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge. Now,
why? In the past,
because
that's how
we developed. We've developed, but you see the difference between the past and today. In the past, today, for example, in the Grenadines, you have sailing schooners that ply the waters and so on, because small people see opportunities and they pursue them, so they use their boats to do this thing. But we live in a very different world. It's a much more globalized environment, and the challenges are greater. The way of doing business is different. So the solutions of the past, while, yes, it's true we had sea transport in the past, the type of sea transport we need, the frequency, the capacity, is on a totally different scale from what existed in the past. And so we have to readjust to that reality. Now, in terms of an approach to solving the problem, we believe that in everything we do by way of economic development, it is not just about economic growth, but it has to be growth with equity. Because if you grow the economies, but you grow it so that those who already have are the ones who are benefiting from all of that growth, you still create serious problems. That's what's happening in places like a lot of the Western countries. The growing gap between rich and poor. We need to push growth, but we need to do it with equity so that more and more citizens of the OECS can participate in that increasing prosperity that we envisage.
Illustrate that for us. Illustrate that.
So we started, for example, on the transport front by saying, okay, there are already persons who ply different routes across the OECS with ships, small ship owners. We applied to Compete Caribbean. It was to get a grant. We got a grant of $600,000, not for the commission, but to help those existing boat owners constitute themselves into a company or a vibrant association rationalize the routes themselves and work out a more systematic form of movement with using the existing fleet, And the truth is we ended up losing that money because we couldn't get them at the end of the day to consolidate around their own self-interest. People were still locked into just managing their own stuff and not making the time to address the common concerns that could give them access to a much broader market.
But isn't that where the point of failure in everything that you're doing, this sense of people not wanting to come together, and what's at the heart of it?
No, I don't think it's people not wanting to come together. I mean, the logic of coming together is clear to a lot of people. The problem is... Theoretically, the problem is making time from what you see as the business of running, if I'm running a boat, for me to attend to a more regional perspective in terms of shipping, I have to devote time to that. And perhaps they're not prepared to devote the time, or they expect somebody else to do it. Now, the challenge here is that we need to get that shipping capacity in place. And obviously, there'll be a lot of big players who will be, once they see the opportunity, they'll be anxious to move into that space. Now, I bet you when we do that, you'll hear some of the small ship owners
that's the point I'm saying,
complaining that they've been left out of the equation, but they were the first point of call. So I hope it's not lost, because the ECCB had actually set up a company that is meant to help have that public-private partnership in promoting shipping across the region. Now, the inclusion of Martinique as a member does a lot for the whole demographic and the economies of scale of the OECS.
Before we get there, let's say the philosophy behind Martinique becoming a member of the OECS and the benefits downside also.
Well, the rationale is philosophical. I mean, Martinique is geographically part of the Caribbean, even if politically part of France. From the Martinique end, there's been a very strong movement for inclusion in what is happening in the rest of the OECS. The Martinicans, I believe, are relatively happy being part of France, but they also increasingly want to identify and participate in what is happening in the Caribbean. And the arrangements that have been made with the governance structure allow for them to participate now. So they are fully on board. There are a lot of benefits to be derived from both ends. I mean, right now there's a very active movement of people and commerce, but more at a nowhere near the potential of what it can be between, say, St. Lucia and Martinique, Guadeloupe and Dominica. Their formal inclusion opens up the doors to change a lot of things that we have been doing and expand these things into more structured opportunities. So, for example, with healthcare, just last week we had a delegation from the major hospitals in Martinique that have been serving the OECS countries to look at ways of formalizing the relationship so that we can, for example, insurances operating in the OECS would recognize Martinique as a center for tertiary care, and Cuba as well, so that persons requiring advanced health care can do that. The Martinicans are about to get something called a cyclotron, which helps to identify it's for early detection of cancer. And they will be having that equipment. Equipment that's sophisticated should not be serving just the Martinique market alone. So that too will be available across the OECS for persons to benefit from.
At one point, there was a lot of talk about the South-South, and emphasis was placed on learning Spanish. Mm-hmm. What now in that regard in terms of that aspect of communication?
Well, the world is changing rapidly. In the past, we had this view that we need to learn a foreign language. I think now we need to learn many foreign languages. In fact, it's interesting. On Facebook, I've linked up with the Rosetta Stone site, and there was a survey showing the most frequently, the languages that are spoken by the largest demographic across the world. And you know the number one language? It's Mandarin. So we need to,
people.
So if we, and interestingly, French is somewhere very, low down in the top 10 list of languages. You have Indian languages like Tamil and so on that are being more widely spoken because of the demographics of the world. So if we're serious about participating in this global arena, we have to really change our mindsets and look to new opportunities. And there are new challenges that we need to embrace.
So the aspect.
So it's not just French. We have to learn French and Spanish, at least for our hemisphere, in order to move comfortably. And again, through agencies like CELAC and the Association of Caribbean States, people keep focusing on the Venezuela OECS connection, but we have increasingly strong relations with all of Latin America, right? The Mexicans are very supportive and active. We have actually signed an MOU with Mexico, as not just bilaterally, but the OECS has a memorandum of understanding with Mexico, and we need to engage them. There are huge opportunities for trade, for product development, for technical assistance, for education that we need to make use of.
Okay, so agriculture, you think is going to be back on track? It's one of the focus.
We are hoping so. Now, what I think gives us the opportunity to be successful too about the agriculture thrust, I know you sounded a bit skeptical about it, is the fact of that 400 million. Just think for a minute, Jerry. If we can cut that in half, you know what that's going to mean in practical terms?
Well, I'm with you.
$200 million US saved in foreign exchange.
I am totally with you.
But that's $200 million earned by farmers within our own market.
My problem.
So we're not even talking yet about the export side of revitalizing agriculture, just in terms of internal earning capacities. As I said in my address at the opening of the inaugural council on agriculture, we need to start by taking back our market. We need to take back our market and let us
local market.
Our local market.
Right.
We need to take it back and let us not allow we can use circumstances sometimes. Adversity, as I said earlier, is a great opportunity. You saw the situation with just last week. Several countries have imposed bans because of bird flu recurrence in the U.S. Now, that's a great opportunity for our poultry farmers to step up to the plate.
But why do we need to have that happen?
No, we don't need to have it happen. But I'm saying anytime something like that happens, rather than see it as a problem, we should see it as an opportunity, right? So it constitutes a wake-up call for us to get real about the thing. 30 years ago, Eric Williams spoke about food security in the region, and there was a plan he proposed for food security which was not taken seriously. Now, 30 years, 40 years later, we have to catch up.
But what makes us going? What is there that will make us take this plan seriously?
Well, the fact that the current, I think the global economic situation and the squeeze that it is imposing on us with debt servicing and all of the trade restrictions that we face and so on, and now make these options more viable. And I think they make them even an inescapable option for our policymakers to embrace.
That moves us nicely into the question of the state of the economy. Practically every one of the OECS countries I could think of is in deficit territory. And it is a growing concern. The Commission, what does the Commission bring to the table in that regard?
A number of things. One, we are working closely with the entire architecture of OECS integration, the East Caribbean Central Bank. Let me ask you to
just hold your thoughts again as we take a break. This is Time to Face the Facts. My guest, Dr. Didacus Jules, will be right back in just a moment.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. Our scalable solutions will increase your effectiveness and efficiency while enabling workforce mobility. Large or small, you can't hide from potential threats to your business. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email CaribbeanInformationHub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place. CaribVision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the CaribVision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. CaribVision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
When you send money with Western Union, you're sending a smile, a gift, a hello, or even support. It's a fast and convenient way to stay connected with loved ones around the world, or even across the Caribbean. From any of our convenient agent locations, depend on Western Union to send your money quickly and reliably. Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Granans, the Carenage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
Back to Time to Face the Facts. We're discussing the intricacies of the OECS Commission and some of what is involved in making integration work for us. Helping us is Dr. Didacus Jules, the Director General. Yes, I broke it and we spoke up the question.
Yeah, you asked what do we bring to the table. In a simple word, convergence. It's a very important principle for us, and convergence from many perspectives. Convergence of people, convergence of ideas, convergence of effort. I think this is what the Commission brings to the table. And let me tell you in practical terms how that works. We just established, as I said, the Council of Ministers on Health, on Agriculture. But undergirding that is a technical working group that comprises the FAO, IECA, CARICOM, the CARICOM agriculture people, and all of the top expertise in agriculture in the OECS. And the idea is that this working group has been the one shaping the development of the agricultural plan of action. Now, that's a very powerful vehicle because it does several things. It brings together expertise across the board to work with a common purpose to resolving the things. So our best minds in agriculture, our best talent is being utilized. We are also increasingly drawing on talent from the diaspora. These working groups exist now across the OECS in several areas. So, for example, in trade, we have meetings of all the trade experts in the OECS. There was a group of over 40 persons working with two of our commissioners, Ambassador Antoine of Grenada and Ambassador John of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to shape our positions, common positions for the OECS on trade with Canada, with WTO, shaping positions. And we also draw in on expertise in the diaspora. We have people who are well qualified in intellectual property law and so on, and trade law and so on, who are assisting in that process. It costs us nothing to get this done because we work by virtual means. When the Ebola crisis emerged, we immediately convened a meeting of the Council of Health, Ministers of Health, and they agreed to have weekly meetings every Tuesday at 10 a.m. All of the Ministers of Health of the OECS, together with their chief medical officers and top medical advisors, are part of a video conference. The technology we use is such that they don't even have to go to a video conferencing location to get this done. From their smartphone, their computer, or even a fixed line, they can participate in this call.
Callers, just note that the numbers that you can call are on the screen at this point, and you can call us. We'd love to have your calls and questions for Dr. Jules.
So the long and short of this, Jerry, is that we have to understand that, first of all, the problems that we face are historical problems. We cannot solve these problems by continuing to use the same old siloed, fixed ideas that have not yielded results. So we need bold new ideas. Nobody has a monopoly on ideas. And there was a guy who did a TED talk once saying that in any room, the smartest person in the room is the room itself. Right? Even if you have a room, you have 100 people in a room and 6 Nobel laureates, the smartest person is still the room. Because the power of convergence, ideas, interactions, that is what makes innovation happen.
But hold on, I love this. Here's my issue. We are not taught like that in the region. In the region, our education system has made us very insular.
Yeah, Jerry, stop saying
until you tell us how we change that mindset, I will stop saying it.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you how we change it. We change it by doing it. You see, again, it's not about talking about how we're going to change it. Habits begin by changing. If you're a chain smoker, one day you have to decide, okay, instead of smoking 10 cigarettes, I'm going to smoke 2 less today. And that's how we begin to change the paradigm. So, again, let's not see things in silos. I mean, you know the work that was done at CXC. There have been huge transformations that have happened in CXC in terms of setting the stage for a whole different education agenda. Now, whether ministries come on board or so, that's another question, right? But these changes have been made. Changes have to be made in every sector. And again, the principle of convergence is by bringing all these threads together, we create a different tapestry of possibilities. Right? I
had meant to introduce this a little bit later as a different thing, but we're here. The question of technology in all of this.
Technology has a hugely important role to play. And again, there are a lot of things that we can draw on. We must get past the mindset that believes that we are helpless and dependent. We have huge potential that we need to tap. There is, for example, something called CADASTI and the Caribbean Science Foundation, which is led by Professor Cardinal Ward. Mm-hmm. Now, in the last 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, CSF's emphasis has been on science and technology, well, STEM, science, mathematics, engineering and technology in the classroom. So they've run with SAGICOR, the Visionaries Challenge. They've run the SPICE program where you take the best science students in the region and take them through an MIT-style academy during the summer period at Cave Hill. They learn Mandarin, robotics, calculus, to prepare them for great careers and opportunities in world-class universities. Some of these guys have gone on to Cambridge and MIT. Now, what CSF has just agreed to do is to set up something called Carib Venture, which is a fund, a startup fund for technology startups in the region. So now we're going to, aside from the educational work being done, now we're going to have a capacity, and I'm part of the board shaping this thing. We're now going to have a capacity to have, so you train young people, they do things like Cape Digital Media and all of that, entrepreneurship. They can then flow, there is somewhere they can go that can help to incubate technology startups that they would think. And the person who's spearheading that is a guy called Nicholas Brafitt. He's Grenadian. He works in Silicon Valley. He's been hugely successful, connected to all the major players, right? Google and everything. I mean, Brafitt is the type that, to show you the caliber of Caribbean person, he took a $32,000 US company and grew it into a $20 billion technology operation. And that is the caliber of Caribbean talent that is ready to work with us to help make this thing happen. Now, you know, so if you want to be successful and you want to change our approach to doing things, you don't rely on the same people who have not been able to make it happen all these years. You look for people who have had successes in the area to come on board to spearhead those things.
Dr. Kenny Anthony, in a speech he gave in Trinidad, something dividends. I can't remember the exact title. Yeah. But he made the point in terms of technology that in our school system, we have all the technology, but the failing link are the teachers themselves in terms of teaching the technology.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the failing link. I mean, I agree with what he says to some extent. I think the fundamental failing link, as I've said in my former life, are the ministries of education, because they're the ones who set the policy. If you put in technology in schools, you have to recognize that, especially ICT, it must, as I've repeatedly preached, must stand on 4 legs, not just on 1 leg. It's not just a matter of giving laptops to schools. You also have to look at the bandwidth question, and that's a whole story by itself, because I have real issues with the current providers, both Digicel and Cable and Wireless, with respect to how they treat with bandwidth. I see them now advertising that they've cut this big deal with Facebook for free bandwidth. Bandwidth is not about Facebook. The bandwidth we need in the Caribbean in education is scalable bandwidth. That's if 100 kids in the school log on, they can have seamless use of the internet. The bandwidth would scale to allow that to happen. And bandwidth for creative purposes, for them to be programming stuff and writing mobile apps and doing research and so on, not just Facebook. Facebook does not take you anywhere, I mean, as useful as it is.
So I see a pause there. Let me just interject in that pause. And I agree with you on the bandwidth issue. I absolutely agree with you on that issue. But there was, when the change was going from fixed to mobile, there was a lot of involvement of all sorts of people. How come on this issue of data that there isn't the same fervor?
Because we didn't, I think the technology, we were not up to speed with the technology. There are a few Caribbean guys who thoroughly understand it. Somebody like Bevel Wooden, who is now the strategic advisor to the OECS on ICT. They understand this question, right? We have Caribbean guys who get it and who should have been roped into those discussions.
And why won't they?
Maybe people are not aware of them. The technocrats who are responsible for regulation of the sector, they were not as savvy as the providers they were negotiating with. That's the reality. And I think that's why you see we need to think ahead of the curve too. That's where you see the interconnection between things. If we want to move into liberalization and all of that, then in our priority list for scholarships and training of our people and so on, we have to look at those advanced emerging careers and skills and ensure that we prepare people to play these roles.
And I mean, knowing the industry myself, we are woefully short.
We're woefully short because, you see, even in terms of some of the new requirements, I don't know if you've seen on the website, we've put up the OECS perspective on this merger, but looking beyond the merger, because mergers will come and mergers will go. But we're looking at what we need to ensure is in place to give us the capacity we require in ICT and bandwidth and so on, broadband.
Okay, we have our first caller, so let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller.
Good evening to you and good evening to your guests.
This is nice.
I am very interested in this conversation that's happening, especially integration. Earlier in the program, your guest mentioned in relation to Antigua threatening to withdraw from the OECS if something doesn't go their way, that membership is voluntary, and that we do understand. But when you get into a voluntary grouping of this type, isn't there some obligation to the other members so that one party cannot just take up his marbles and go if things not going his way? What is the obligation to the other member states if one member state just decide that, look, this thing not working for me, so I go? I'd love to hear him address that, please.
What's your call?
The obligation, I guess, is the pain of history because, it's like a marriage. For a marriage to continue and be successful, both parties have to remain committed to it. If one party wants out, as much as the other party may try their best to keep them in, you have to accept the reality. We saw what happened with the West Indies Federation. We've seen, failure. We've experienced the consequences of failure from integration efforts in the past in the Caribbean, and I think we have to be guided by that. And I would hope that Caribbean people themselves are, at this point, politically sophisticated enough to recognize that what the consequences of a pullout would be. If you go it alone, what are your chances of surviving?
Shouldn't we take a cue from Scotland and the United Kingdom?
Yeah.
That the Scottish people went to referendum and decided that they wanted to stay.
Yeah, they wanted to stay. But again, it comes back to the earlier discussion we had. There was the threat of withdrawal. And what did that threat yield? It was a wake-up call for the British authorities themselves to see, well, are we treating Scotland are we listening to the Scottish concerns and what needs to be put in place so that there's more equity in the relationship?
Let's go back.
It's just like your wife telling you, Jerry, I'm going to leave you if you don't pay attention to me. If you don't want her to leave, you have to pay more attention to her.
Let's go back to the technology issue that we were talking about. The dot-com bubble burst because they had put all this fiber all over the world, and it didn't pan out the way it was supposed to pan out. Mm-hmm. So India saw the opportunity and said, fine, they have all this fiber across the ocean linking us. Why don't we use it? How come the Caribbean, so close, and our leadership and academics never understood the issue?
Like I said, it was just I believe it was a limitation of our scientific understanding of how that technology works.
Really?
Generally.
Well, we have
at least at the level of the policymakers and the technicians who were leading that process. I can tell you now, though, what is happening, and I watch with interest with how countries have been maneuvering around the Columbus Cable and Wireless merger, because if you read the document put out by the OECS as our draft discussion paper on it, we are insisting that there be certain things put in place, and a disaggregation of the fiber from the fiber backbone from the over-the-top services is absolutely necessary. The monopolization of fiber is one of the surest ways to exercise a stranglehold on the provision of broadband. Now, one of the things that we are looking at the OECS level are ways in which we can do a public-private partnership for the provision of fiber for the OECS. And we can do it either in collaboration with the existing fiber providers, or we can do it with other players who are prepared to assist us in doing that.
But listen, we've been there enough. You remember when we were moving towards the cell phone and the cell tower issue? Mm-hmm. We had a situation where all of the landscape cell towers shut up, and there was complaints everywhere. When simply, to my estimation, the government should
co-location.
Exactly. The government should have owned the cell towers and co-located, and this is how I look at it.
Jerry, that's what happens when, frankly, sometimes let's be fair to people. Technology in this era is changing exponentially, and it is changing so fast. I mean, almost on a monthly basis, if you really want to keep up with, say, an area like mobile technology.
Every 18 months is a total switch.
A total switch, right? So you really have to be on top of your game and monitoring this and have the capability of monitoring it. Even some of the things that we call in for. I mean, you look at mobiles in the Caribbean. I mean, I have complained about this. On the Castries to Viewfort Highway, mobile calls drop so many times, and that's a main transport artery in the country. You cannot be a mobile provider with a license and tell me that a phone call, as I checked it myself, 17 times a call drop between Castries to Viewfort, right?
What's the NTRC?
Now, the NTRC is there, but I'm saying the NTRC needs a capability which requires some sophistication to be able to monitor those things and for us to put in place a regime, a regulatory regime that says if you cannot guarantee a certain level and quality of provision to consumers, then penalties will accrue to that.
But should we not be there?
We should be there, but I mean, as I'm saying, we need to build the capacity to do those things. And until we have the capacity, then we'll be complaining about it, but we will not have the ability to put it under control.
So that's what, to me, the biggest aspect of technology, you hit it, right, is the question of broadband, the internet. Mm. The internet has got to become affordable, accessible, but more importantly, it has got to be very reliable.
I'll tell you something, governments are spending millions of dollars on telephony and broadband that they should not be spending. And why are we doing it again? Because we've not sat back and done the analysis. And this is something we're undertaking right now. We're doing a survey right now to see what is the spend by the governments of the OECS on broadband and telephony. And already all the results are not in, but we're discovering some mind-blowing facts that effectively the governments can be accessing the broadband that they require for schools and for public purposes at significantly lower rates than what is being paid to these providers now. And the government account is usually one of the biggest business accounts in those providers. So we have a level of, forget the regulatory side of things, we have a fulcrum of leverage there that we need to flex.
You talked about not being aware, but this is where I feel the diaspora comes in. Okay, let us assume, and I don't agree with you that we're not aware, because I consider myself to be very aware of all the stuff that you're saying, right? But we have people in diaspora who work close to Nicholas Brathwaite, who you spoke of a while ago. Why should we always be dependent on the people here who are not aware to be making these decisions, to be doing these negotiations, when we know they're not aware?
Okay, so what did I just tell you a while ago? Nicholas Brathwaite is part of Caribbean Venture.
He's part
of the Caribbean Science Foundation. No, he's one of many. We are increasingly using the diaspora. There are a lot of skills out there. Some of our best talent is in the diaspora. They are prepared to give back to the region.
So why don't we bring them when we have some of these negotiations to do?
We are beginning to do that. And let me give you a concrete example. The WTO negotiations taking place. We have, as I said, this working group of 40 persons, more than 40 persons across the OECS, experts in different things. We discovered amazing talent in the islands, people who are experts on trade in spices and rums and so on. Brought all that talent together, we negotiated. There's a St. Lucian Island scholar who is perhaps one of the top people in the Commonwealth with trade, international trade law and intellectual property rights, Genevieve Ramey. She was an island scholar. She works with one of the top firms in Geneva. She's offered her services pro bono. She's part of the working group. So we are beginning to use those resources. And the Caribbean people are very happy to give back to the region in that way.
No, it's seriously one of the areas that I'd like to see much more happen at.
Now, the problem with the past is that, yes, we had the Nicholas Brathwaites, the Genevieve Rameys and them out there who were aware and able to contribute, but there was no mechanism that would tap them. And on the part of the groups that were engaged in dealing with the issue, they had no visibility of the existence of these people.
Let's take a break. This is Time to Face the Facts. My guest is Dr. Didacus Jules. He is the Director General of the OECS Commission. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
It's the end of the month again. My son's rent is due.
Sending money to your children studying overseas is easy. Western Union's safe and reliable service lets you transfer money everywhere in the world.
My son is doing well at school. That makes me proud.
Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Grand Anse, the Carnage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place, CaribVision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the CaribVision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. CaribVision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
Back to this edition of Time to Face the Facts, and we're looking at the OECS Commission, what it has to offer to us as a region. We made another attempt to get to the question of the economy, the deficit financing, and the role of people like the ECCB in managing all of that, because clearly something is fundamentally wrong with our economics. The Commission must see that as a concern. So, for example, you have St. Lucia and Antigua being about 44% of the GDP of the region, but in trouble.
Yeah, well, as I said, there are a number of things being attempted. The basic thing is the growth and development strategy of the OECS. And in fact, the World Bank, that was one of the things that precipitated this discussion with the World Bank about the need for them first to work out a systematic thing, because the World Bank had developed a growth strategy for the OECS.
This is important. Viewers, please remember that the numbers are on the screen, and we'd like to get your calls. From wherever you are, please call us.
So they developed this growth strategy, and we were saying that, we can't have processes being dictated from outside of the region. There has to be a multifaceted, integrated approach to this thing. The ECCB has been working with us on the growth and development strategy of the OECS. At the level of the Monetary Council, they've set certain targets, the measures that they're putting in place to fiscal measures to manage the debt, to reduce it systematically. But these things don't exist in isolation. You know, it has to be managing the debt, growing the economy. You know, targets have to be set. Safeguarding tourism, because that for now is one of our
Jules,
saving points.
I've been nice on this one.
Yeah.
But let's face the reality. There's a lot of stuff that is happening in the economies of these countries under the management of the ECCB that you wonder if politically people are making decisions about the economies and their spend that is not making sense. So I mentioned the fact earlier that, yes, we are always seemingly in an election cycle. And people do crazy things. I read recently that for Antigua's latest IMF report, that it is skewed because the government then that is out of office now just simply drained the treasury before they went out. I mean, are we ever going to fix this if that's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with?
Well, the question is, how do we fix it? Because frankly, I mean, governments are the ones in control of the purse strings. Now, I'm really not sure what the answer to that is. I mean, you know, we advise to the best of our ability. We put parameters in. You have multilaterals. The good thing is that a lot of these donors, the multilaterals, work closely together. So the World Bank, the IMF, the ECCB, ourselves. We hope that by proposing the best practices and the parameters and the targets that need to be observed, if governments buy into this and they approve those things, then they have an obligation to see them through.
But that's the if. The reality is that it's not happening. And that leads me to wonder about the real significance of the central bank itself, okay, in terms of stopping this happening. Yes, we have, and this is where I go back to this question.
Yeah, but let's be clear, Jerry. The central bank is not a national treasury.
No, I know it's not a national treasury.
The central bank is the people who are responsible for monetary policy around the EC dollar. So, I mean, certain safeguards can be put in place by way of legislative requirements. There can be stipulations that are put in place that governments have to observe. And I think part of the challenge here is for where you might see those tendencies of people going off course for the other member governments to draw the line on that and indicate that, you know, certain...
Yeah, but who makes them draw the line? That's my question.
It has to be a collective thing. It has to be done at the level of the authority.
The ECB keeps speaking about this as an 8-point plan. I've been hearing about that for years.
Yeah.
And I'm not impressed that it has done anything or is doing anything. Because the targets, for example, of debt to GDP, Antigua's now gone back up to 97%. I mean, we just let this happen? We're talking about a union, you know. And like in the case of the European Union, they have targets. And if the countries break those targets, there's some sanction. If we're not prepared to come to that level in our region, are we really serious?
In agreement with that, but for us to set those targets and include sanctions, it would have to be a collective decision. So,
okay, we have a call. So thank you for calling, St. Lucia.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for your guests as well. Very good discussion so far. I'm very interested in the role of civil society in keeping government on their toes, because it looks like they just get into power and they do their own thing. How can we strengthen civil society for them to get the government to do what the people need? Thank you very much.
Scholar, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's something that we've been wrapping our minds around, because one of the vision priorities we have is the whole question of assuring the security and well-being of citizens. And part of that is what can we do to strengthen governance in the OECS. There are a lot of things that can be done from different angles that could collectively help to strengthen civil society and at the same time impact on the overall governance in the region. For example, I met a couple weeks ago with the representatives of the National Consumer Association in St. Lucia. There are consumer associations of varying strengths across the OECS. And what we did was to indicate to them our support for the work that they're doing with advocacy on the consumer rights front. And to make the technology we have available, the same technology we use for the meetings of the working groups that support the councils of ministers, to make that available so that they can begin meeting virtually to create an OECS-wide consumer advocacy movement.
But there's a CARICOM chat already for that area, and it seems that everybody has just ignored it.
Well, I mean, I'm one of those persons. I'm not so as strong a believer in charters and all of that as the action that needs to be done to get things going. And I think that's where the rubber hits the road. So to the extent that we can help people to organize, to articulate their concerns, to listen to those voices, the processes that we are building around some of the things that we are developing, like the Growth and Development Plan. These things we're going to be having meetings with the OECS Business Council, which are all private sector persons. I've been doing a lot of meetings with different private sector entities like in tourism and so on, to begin to engage them and involve them in the processes so that they bring these perspectives into the shaping of the solutions that we are attempting.
Go back to the caller's question. The most important thing to make a decision is information. Mm-hmm. In these countries, we have a Freedom of Information Act. We spoke earlier about what I call the optional view of having the opposition brought into these discussions. The reality is there is no place that you can get information of what is really the true situation. And therefore, to my mind, you cannot get people really involved because they don't have the information. The government stand in the way.
I mentioned, yes and no, Jerry, to be honest. I mentioned earlier a project with CDB on statistics. Part of what we are attempting to do is to, and we've had that discussion not just with CDB, but World Bank and IMF and so on. We need to put in place a data capability within the OECS, the Commission, that links into member states so that we're kind of almost there with respect to education. If you look at our education statistics, they very powerfully pull together because it was a very painstaking effort to ensure that on the ground in ministries of education, you have the capability for an accurate compilation of data that can then be aggregated at the regional level. Now, the ultimate vision is to create a capability in the Commission for open data so that all of this information will be there. It will be accessible to the various publics. Obviously, there'll be some types of information that will have to retain a measure of confidentiality, but generally the essential information ought to be made publicly available.
Ought to be.
Yeah, and it will be. That's what we're planning to do in our website. We're even planning, for example, to there's some work being done right now in terms of indicators to measure progress on the implementation of the revised Treaty of Bastille, so that in the future what we hope to do is to publish a State of the Union report that one can go in there and see exactly where we are as a sub-region in the progress towards the objectives of the revised Treaty of Bastille, but also see by country where we are in that regard. So the discussions we've had with the World Bank and the IMF, we've said to them, for example, the ease of doing business survey, which is something that happens once a year. People freak out when the results come, and then they forget about it. It's just like exam results. And then they do nothing after that. We have said to them, we would like to be the executor of the doing business surveys, because what we want to do is to take that instrument, augment it by adding other concerns, like all the things we need to do in relation to the revised Treaty of Bastille on the economic front, and administer that survey at least twice a year. So it no longer becomes a final statement on where we are, but instead becomes a tool that can help us. So within 6 months we do it, we see what the results say, we see where we've fallen short, we know what we need to do for the next 6 months if we are to move the needle and make progress on that front. So in that way, we can really we're using data collection, statistics, and information, not just to provide historical after the fact picture of things, but to be a driver of progress going forward.
Big data, they call it today.
Yeah,
right?
Big data. And data visualization
exactly.
is one of those elements.
But again, my worry is about our mindset. And you might think that I'm being negative. I'm not. I'm simply facing the reality as we have it. People have grown up with this concept of holding stuff, right?
Yeah,
hiding information.
But that's a challenge we face on a day-to-day basis. I mean, in different areas. You know, the truth of the matter is there is more data collected than we even making use of.
There you go.
I mean, just think about it. So many surveys are being done. Even things like the immigration forms coming in. I can tell you, I'm pretty certain, and I know for a fact that there are a couple of countries where you have 2 years of these forms sitting in boxes. They've not been entered on the computer. So you question what is the value of doing that? We're doing things just because we've done them in the past. Now, you notice if you travel to the U.S. now, you no longer have to fill out an immigration form because the passenger advisory information that resides with the airlines contains all the information.
But we have those...
All the additional information that's required is where you're going to be staying. They ask you that and they enter it. So, again, part of the work we're doing, and you see this is the kind of painstaking detailed work that is behind the scenes and sort of hidden from public view. But work is being done to try to regularize those things. How can we get to that stage, right?
But
make those
you see, that is why I have an issue, right? That is not rocket science. We have the technology already available to do the job. It's there. Because we're using the same computer equipment that they're using.
Yeah, well, it's a little more complex than that. It's a little more complex than that. It's more complex than that, yes, on face value. Yes, the computers are there. But there is also a thing of cost and how we negotiate and position ourselves in that space.
That's the problem.
I mean, we have a laissez-passer that we've developed that the OECS has for officials traveling across the region. And it's not machine readable. So I've just come in there and decided, well, why aren't we using a machine readable thing? Well, let's move it to readable. We got a design done and everything. The people who print the passports want us to pay $200,000 US for an OECS diplomatic passport. And now these are the same people that are already providing passports to every one of the member countries, not just in the OECS, but CARICOM. So I'm like, well, why are we going to be charged separately for this? Because you're already doing the same passports for all these countries. And then I discovered that in many cases, the countries are being charged in silos for those things. Now, had we done a pool procurement of the technology for machine-readable passports, we could have been running this thing at a fraction of the cost. But people are locked into contracts. So again,
but are we going to phase out of those contracts and get there?
Well, we have to. We have to. We have the PPS at the OECS, the Pharmaceuticals Procurement Service. For the last decade or so, we've been procuring essential medicines and pharmaceuticals at up to 40% off, and these are quality drugs at up to 40% off the price, the shelf price. So governments have benefited from that pool procurement.
Then my question is...
So what we are looking at now is how can we expand that?
But why should that be? If you're doing it here, what has stopped us so far from understanding, fine, this works in this particular area, why don't we spread it?
Jerry,
what's the problem?
I'll be frank with you. The problems, we have met the enemy and it is us. Right? We have met the enemy and it is us. You'll be amazed The logic of pool procurement is inescapable. It's in our face. It's a numbers-driven thing. You can prove it mathematically, the superiority of that approach. But the simplest things, before I came in, many years ago, I did a consultancy for the OECS on the education reform unit. When the Canadians their funding was drying up, where to go next. And I was able to show in that report that by pooling the procurement of essential goods in education, like textbooks, school supplies, you could literally, on a small markup, not only would it be cheaper to governments to provide those things, but it will provide enough funding to totally finance the work of that unit of the OECS. It hasn't happened. Not from lack of effort, because in ministries of education, you have people, bureaucrats, and people always blame the politicians. But the politicians have to get their blows where they deserve it, but they should not also be unjustifiably accused. You have petty bureaucrats, sometimes even down to the level of a curriculum officer, who decide that that's their fiefdom, and they will insist that, using all possible arguments, that that particular textbook is the one I think needs to go, despite the fact that the rest of the region wants to have textbook A, I say it has to be B. And I will frustrate every effort to impose textbook A as the prescribed text, thus affecting that opportunity.
So how is the Commission going to insert itself in there? So that
it's a very simple formula for me. A coalition of the willing.
That's another nice term, but if they're not willing?
No, there are people who are willing. So we work with whoever is willing. And by demonstrating the results, those who are not on board, questions will be asked. Well, whether the questions are asked by the politicians themselves as to why aren't we benefiting from this, or by the people themselves asking, well, why aren't we on board if other countries are making progress in that way?
Again, that will depend on the information being available.
It will be but I guarantee you it will be made available. That's why I spoke earlier about us doing this State of the Union reports and having it publicly posted on the internet. This information must be...
How soon you plan to have one of those out?
It probably will take us about 6 to 9 months to get that in place. We're still discussing with the World Bank the modality of taking on the study and so on. And there's foundational work to be done for those things, because the work we're doing with statistics, setting up a proper data unit and so on, is being funded by CDB. But the capacity to collect and effectively disseminate those things, right, is... But we have amazing capabilities. I mean, a report was just done published by the World Bank, but the work effectively was done by some of the top statisticians in the OECS, including Edwin St. Catherine, who's the Director of Statistics in St. Lucia, on the impact of the world economic crisis on the labor market of St. Lucia, but by extension the OECS, because what obtains there could pretty much be extrapolated. Now, that's the kind of work we want to see happen in the future, not us being studied by other people, our own people engaged in analyzing the situation, being thought leaders on defining the problem and working out the solutions.
But having done that, I mean, what is he going to... We have this information, how are we going to use it?
Well, the widest dissemination of that information. And, I mean, the more... We've been playing a role in helping to disseminate it, bring it to the attention of policymakers. Some of that type of information we bring to the commissioners, because the commissioners are our sort of like our board of governors, our interface with the governments. And it's becoming increasingly effective. The commissioners are becoming more and more engaged. They're becoming more enthusiastic about, doing stuff and working closely with the Commission and interfacing with the relevant ministries and stakeholders to get things done. Our focus is on getting things done.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking health and how the Commission plans to deal with that. This is Time to Face the Facts. Don't go away. We'll be right back with much more.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place. CaribVision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the CaribVision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. CaribVision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
When you send money with Western Union, you're sending a smile, a gift, a hello, or even support. It's a fast and convenient way to stay connected with loved ones around the world, or even across the Caribbean. From any of our convenient agent locations, depend on Western Union to send your money quickly and reliably. Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Granans, the Carenage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
This is Time to Face the Facts, and welcome back as we discuss the OECS Commission on this edition. Dr. Jules, I said we'd look at the question of health. It has come in terms of food, agriculture, and the role that agriculture could play in improving our health. I saw in one of those weekly meetings on your website that they were meeting to deal with the international health regulations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Ebola situation was the focal point of that mechanism that we set up. And again, it provided us with an opportunity to begin to work. We've had over 50 people in the OECS trained in Ebola, management of Ebola in Cuba at a specialized institute. So coming out of that, again, that's why I made the point, things can only begin to change when you start changing. You only change direction when you take the first steps in a different direction. And the more you walk the road, the more confident you become, and the more success breeds success. So coming out of that, the ministers are very pleased with the results. People are saying that, they're really beginning to understand how the commission can be of service to them, right? Because of what the results they see it being achieved. So we've begun to shift our focus now that the level of readiness of Ebola is, in a state of comfort, to look at the international health regulations, because had we been compliant with the international health regulations, a lot of the preparatory work we had to do on Ebola would not have been as backbreaking or as necessary. Now, because again of our reliance on tourism, it's vitally important that we be in compliance with those things. So that's one of the big immediate issues.
But before you go,
drawing attention.
What is there to stop countries taking unilateral action like they did in the Ebola issue? People recognized that there was the IHR recommended approach, and countries blatantly said, too bad, we're doing what we want. What is there to stop that happening again?
Which countries said that?
There are countries who imposed bans when the IHR said no. You shouldn't.
Oh, no. That's a different thing. I mean, it's not because an international body says that this is the procedure that it means that that has to be the gospel and law for everybody. Remember, at the end of the day, countries act on the basis of their self-interest. Now, sometimes the expression of that self-interest could be seen as being narrow-minded, but it can also sometimes be a real assertion of sovereignty. And I think the countries in the Caribbean were correct to do what they did, because it's okay for the international community to say that in order to impose a ban is not a preferred course of action, and in order to impose a ban, there's a legal protocol you have to follow with notification and all of that. The rate at Ebola are waiting for any protocol, you know.
I asked the question
disease requires no visa.
Because that was a real situation.
Diseases require no visa.
No, I hear you.
So the governments acted with immediacy, given the severity of the potential threat that we face. So let's be clear about that. Now, having done that, they then proceeded to notify, right? But the important thing was to create a situation where we protected ourselves from any possible influx, but then to put the processes in place. Now we are looking at the international regulations and seeing how do we come on board and be compliant with all of those things. But again, some of the compliance with the international health regulations is, while it is an important element of being part of the global community and the part of the global umbrella for health protection, is not a simple thing either. There are serious cost implications in implementing some of the measures that are required and so on. So countries have to address that issue.
Politically, the government had support of the population, so that was good. The population actually agreed.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. You have to safeguard your people, you know. But associated with this health thrust too are the questions of, we are looking at how can we ensure that we continue to make health more accessible and more affordable to the people of the region. So we are doing a number of things. Compliance with the international health regulations is at a sort of regulatory level. But in practical terms, we've been having discussions with, well, Martinique being part of the OECS now, Martinique and Cuba in particular, in treating them as centers for tertiary healthcare. So how can we again, building on best practices that already exist, but taking it to a whole new level. How can we ensure better articulation of our health services with opportunities for tertiary treatment in those places, and do it in a way that they become part of health plans? So the insurances, there was a Cuban team as well as the Martinican team, they met with the insurance councils, and they've been having discussions on how to articulate. And very positive response. The financing of healthcare for government.
I think you need to expand on that insurance bit, because right now, going to Martinique requires that you have health insurance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll not be issued a visa.
Yeah. But there have been cases where, you know, emergency, we still, notwithstanding that, we still have a problem of some very heavy receivables due to Martinique, because they dealt with emergencies as they came and so on. And what I think the purpose for those discussions with the insurance companies is to avoid that complication. We need a situation where we can people can, through their insurance plans or by their own means, have access. And it should not be that only the wealthiest or those who can afford would have access to that health care.
The weight of the NCDs on the region, that are those diseases that really are not caught out of the air, but are lifestyle issues. Can Caribbean Wellness Day was set up in 2011, I think it was agreed upon. Have you seen any progress made in terms of how that is affecting?
Well, you see, Jerry, it comes back to what I was saying earlier. Sometimes an idea by itself may sound good, but it's how you package it and how you present it. We need to get beyond tired solutions. We need to inject excitement in the stuff that we do. So, you remember the OECS had a sports desk some time ago. Reds Pereira was the one running that, and it was very dynamic. It was a single person sports desk, but a whole range of OECS competitions in a range of sporting disciplines were organized and run. Recently, we've been having discussions with Reds about how he can assist us in bringing back that energy to that space.
But why should we had one man doing something, it was so successful, and nobody thought of cloning it?
Yeah, when he retired, other people came, but they were not as successful. It's, again, sometimes the success of a thing depends on the imagination, the commitment, and the dynamism you bring to it. And that's been part of our problem in the Caribbean. People sometimes go into jobs and they just sit in those positions, draw a salary, feel comfortable, and not look at how they can engage, deliver. That's why, for me, as the person managing the commission right now, my whole focus is on delivery and results. And if you cannot deliver and you cannot bring results, then we need a different arrangement. So the idea is to think, to the wellness point, we are trying to conceptualize what we do about sport. We've come up with the idea that it has to operate at many levels. There is that talent that needs to be identified, groomed, and brought to the next level so that we can continue to rise internationally. But sport is should not be just about international competitiveness. It's also an opportunity to infuse healthy lifestyles in the population. Now,
in other words,
part of the legacy...
The way you put it, I think, simply more activity.
Because people need to move more. Get people moving
their bodies more.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, part of the legacy left by somebody like Reds Pereira has been marathons are a big thing in the OECS. People do these walks and so on. The Pine Hill Dairy Walk has been going on for the last, 20 years, I think. And it's been widely successful. Hundreds of people, in fact, a couple thousand, I believe, participated.
Did the one in St. Lucia.
Yeah, a couple thousand people participated, right? So we are thinking this is the kind of energy we need to bring to things. So in the new ideas, for example, is a beach day, an OECS beach day, when on a particular Sunday or holiday that we all agree on, that would be a day for families and beach limes across the whole OECS. Now, there are a lot of things...
They might want their river. I'm very sorry.
Well, no. Well, however you define it. It could be beach, river. But the point about it is, and it's not just to go there and drink rum and so on. It could be beach cleanups, basketball competitions, swimming activities, and so on. But you notice what's happening there. You tie in a sporting activity to the beach, having a sense of more ownership and enjoyment of our beaches by locals, and also introducing the idea of family, so that it becomes a family thing, and then the environmental element can come in with having cleanups and so on. So don't come on the beach on that day and leave the beach with a ton of trash, right? We could use the day to clean up, and then we can bathe and enjoy ourselves.
We run out of time. Let me bring the vexing issue of LIAT. We talked about transportation earlier, but more specifically as it relates to moving products around. That's why we talked about sea. But several questions I've received on my WhatsApp. That question of air transportation, and in particular LIAT, it's all well for there to be, in theory, freedom of movement. But when I can't move...
without the means to move.
This is Easter. I'd love to see what is going to happen this Easter.
Yeah. Well, a number of things are happening from our end on the Commission. We are undertaking a study of air transport costs and challenges in the region. And already what some of the preliminary results are showing is that from a theoretical economic simulation perspective, if we change the price points of travel, is going to stimulate a lot more movement of people. Now, that's common sense.
But the CDB said that to Liat in one of its
that's common sense thing. But the challenge there is to prove to the governments empirically that by because a major part of the cost is government taxes and so on, how by reducing those taxes you will ultimately not be losing because of the anticipated increase in travel that will happen and the impact on the local economies. So that's one thing. The other thing that people need to recognize, Liat is a favorite whipping horse in the Caribbean, and sometimes we cuss things justifiably because we're not happy about the service, but we don't recognize the complexities and even some of the positives in the equation, right? For me, a big positive in Liat is its safety record.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think we should not take that for granted. The other thing about it in terms of the complexity is that because Liat is part of a public service, it's a public good, some of the routes that Liat runs right now are really uneconomical. The loads don't carry the costs.
Yeah, but that's their fault. If you did away with twin otters that could carry 19 people on those routes, and you bring in all big planes, you can't blame people for that?
Well, that's why, again, the study is pointing to that there needs to be a different civil aviation regime that would allow for inter-airline promotion and arrangement. So that, and you have it at three levels. Liat inter-airline arrangements with the bigger airlines like Virgin and British Airways and American, so that smooth ease of transfer and so on of passengers coming in to link in with Liat is assured. And downstream, the linkage of Liat with smaller airlines like Winair and so on, so that you can have that easy movement. So the smaller loads can be carried by smaller airlines. It's straight up, but the thing has to be configured. So I'm hopeful. And, we have partners who are willing. The Mexicans had been approached by Prime Minister Gonzalez, and they've indicated their willingness to help in any way possible, whether it's providing technical assistance by way of logistics support for better planning of routes, to investment in aircraft and all of that.
Must take a final break, actually. This is Time to Face the Facts, and we'll be back with our remaining moments with OECS Commission Director General, Dr. Didacus Jules.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. Our scalable solutions will increase your effectiveness and efficiency while enabling workforce mobility. Large or small, you can't hide from potential threats to your business. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email CaribbeanInformationHub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
Back for our remaining moments with Dr. Didacus Jules, the Director General of the OECS Commission. Ferry service was also one of the things that has been proposed by several people. And there are people who feel, and I'm just saying what is the general feeling, that the actual bring on stream of a ferry service has been frustrated by the airline industry. Where are we in terms of people having that option at least?
Well, I don't know enough about it to attest whether it's been frustrated, but I do know that the establishment of a ferry service is not as easy as people think it is going to be. And there have been a lot of offers on the table to provide ferry services. there are some serious concerns that need to be brought to bear on any proposition. One is obviously the safety question. So we have to be absolutely sure of the safety requirements.
Okay, we have a quick call. Let's take it because we run out of time. Caller, thanks for calling.
Yes, I wish Dr. Didacus Jules could tell us from his desk how we can get economic growth to come back in these islands. I listened to one of our own Caribbean people from City University of New York address that economic forum in Barbados recently. And he was critical of our leaders in terms of how economic growth has gone to 0 point whatever. So I think the important thing is finding a way. There was a time when green gold brought wealth to our small island states.
Thank you.
What is the projection now?
Yeah, the question basically goes back to the whole question of what do we do about economic growth?
Well, I mean, that's more what I've been discussing all night. There are a number of things we need to do. We need to take a different approach to our economic initiatives to be more convergent in those efforts. I mentioned the agriculture situation with the food import bill. To the extent we cut down our food import bill, we have growth and stimulation in the economy and so on, jobs being created. We need to look at, I think generally the approach would be to invest. We need to look at an approach that involves more production rather than consumption. Mm-hmm. If you look at a lot of our private sectors, I've been highly critical of the private sector generally, or the shape of the private sector in the OECS, because a major portion of the private sector is in distributive trades. Now, distribution really cannot give us growth. Mm-hmm. What is needed is investment in productive capacity. So that's where I think our governments have to focus their efforts. The foreign direct investment has been dwindling, although it's been picking up in some countries, especially in Antigua, with the efforts of the new government. But we need to rely less on foreign direct investment and, again, find ways of mobilizing our own capital. In the diaspora is a significant source. I believe that our investment regimes, and that's part of the proposals we make into governments, we should be offering incentives to people of the Caribbean diaspora wanting to invest in the Caribbean that are much better in their terms than what we do to foreign direct investors.
Agreed. But because we're out of time, I must ask you this question, though. I saw a statement put out by the Commission on the declining relationship between the USA and Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Yet the Commission was desperately quiet when it came to the question of what was happening in St. Kitts. How do you justify that?
I don't think I can justify it. I think it is part of the challenge of what we need to do to strengthen governance in the region.
No, but how could you feel that there's a moral authority to speak to Venezuela and the USA, and when there's blatant things that threaten democracy within the union for which we're responsible, there's no statement by the Commission?
Yeah. You're correct. But it's...
But how do we fix that? Because, what happened there is totally, to me, it's vulgar, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. These matters require... It's been part of the history of the Caribbean where we need to be more attentive to our internal affairs and be more proactive in terms of pointing out our own weaknesses and contradictions and attempting to deal with those things rather than later down the road when the horse has bolted the stable. At the point in the election when there was a lot of uncertainty because of the absence of the chief elections officer, a number of calls were made. The Commission was very active in trying to do something to...
Yeah, but it's a matter that has gone on for 2 years,
It's been gone. That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying, yes, I do acknowledge that we have to put measures in place to deal more proactively with those questions. again, the Commission is not a creature of its own volition. So the issuance of statements and so on requires approval by heads. So these are matters that need to be discussed at the level of heads. And, there have been indications that it has to be put on the agenda to discuss, to see. And I'm sure with a new government in St. Kitts, these issues will be placed on the table.
We must close. Thank you very much, Dr. Jules, as usual, for being such a great guest. This has been this month's edition of Time to Face the Facts. Thank you for viewing, and we hope that we have given you a better understanding of the OECS Commission. I'm Jerry George. So long.